It started as a typical day at the busy restaurant, with customers rushing in and the manager overseeing every detail with an air of authority. But when a quiet, professionally dressed black woman walked in, the manager's attitude shifted. He greeted her with a sarcastic smile and a mocking tone, assuming she was out of place. His words were dismissive, and his condescending remarks didn't go unnoticed by the staff. What he didn't realize, though, was that this wasn't just another customer. She was there on official business. Unfazed by his attitude, the woman calmly introduced herself as the lead inspector, sent to review the establishment's compliance with licensing and safety regulations. You could feel the tension rise in the room as her words sank in. The manager's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a look of shock. What happened next changed everything for the restaurant and for the manager's career. The room fell silent as the manager stumbled over his words, trying to backtrack from his earlier comments. His arrogance had melted into nervousness, but the lead inspector maintained her calm, professional demeanor. She introduced herself again, this time more firmly, and explained the purpose of her visit. The staff exchanged uneasy glances, realizing the situation had taken a serious turn. The inspector began her review, clipboard in hand, walking through the restaurant with sharp eyes. She examined every detail, from the kitchen's cleanliness to the storage conditions in the back. Meanwhile, the manager followed closely, awkwardly trying to justify minor oversights, his earlier bravado nowhere to be found. What made it worse was that the staff seemed unusually tense around her, as if they had their own stories to tell about his behavior. Was this inspection just about licenses and regulations, or was something bigger unfolding? The truth was about to come to light. As the inspector moved through the restaurant, her calm yet authoritative presence seemed to unsettle everyone, especially the manager. His attempts to steer her focus toward less problematic areas only made him look desperate. The staff quietly watched, some whispering to each other whenever the inspector's back was turned. It wasn't long before she began asking pointed questions, ones that suggested she already knew more about the restaurant than she let on. One of the servers, visibly nervous, accidentally dropped a glass, drawing the inspector's attention. She paused, turning toward the employee with a reassuring smile, a stark contrast to the manager's sharp glare. "Is everything okay here?" she asked softly. The server hesitated but nodded, avoiding eye contact. The tension between the staff and their manager became more obvious as the inspection continued. It wasn't just about the restaurant's operations. There was a deeper, unspoken conflict simmering beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. The air grew heavier as the inspection went on. The manager's attempts to put on a confident front were failing miserably, and the cracks in his leadership were becoming more visible. The inspector asked direct questions about procedures, documentation, and training practices, each one striking a nerve. The staff seemed torn between relief and fear as they watched her unearth issues they had silently endured for months. Then came the moment no one expected. The inspector turned to the staff and asked, "Has anyone here ever reported any concerns about this workplace?" The room froze. For a moment, no one spoke, but the tension was palpable. A young kitchen worker shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the manager, who shot him a warning look. The inspector didn't miss a thing. She placed her pen down and said calmly, "You should know that anything shared with me is protected." That simple statement sent ripples through the room, and it was clear the truth was teetering on the edge, ready to come out. The silence hung in the air as the inspector's words lingered, inviting anyone to speak. The young kitchen worker hesitated, his gaze darting between the inspector and the manager. Finally, he took a shaky breath and said, There's a lot that happens here." His voice was barely above a whisper, but it was enough to send a ripple of unease through the room. The manager's face turned pale as he interjected. Now, hold on, this is all a misunderstanding. But his voice wavered, betraying his panic. The inspector remained composed, her eyes fixed on the employee. She encouraged him gently. It's okay. Take your time. The young worker wasn't alone for long. Another staff member, an experienced server, stepped forward. It's not just him, she said firmly. We've been dealing with unfair treatment for months, some of us for years. But every time we speak up, it gets worse. The inspector's expression didn't change, but her tone sharpened as she turned to the manager. Is that true? She asked, her question cutting through the tension like a blade. The manager stammered, but before he could respond, another voice interrupted from the back. A woman, dressed in business attire, entered the room with a clipboard of her own. I'm from corporate, she announced. I received a complaint this morning, and I'm here to investigate. The staff gasped, and the manager's composure completely unraveled. Now there were 2 investigations, and no way for him to hide. The room was electric with tension as the corporate representative joined the scene. The manager's attempt to regain control failed as the inspector and corporate rep exchanged glances, clearly aligned in their determination to uncover the truth. The staff, emboldened by the inspector's reassurance, began sharing their experiences, stories of unfair scheduling, verbal mistreatment, and even safety violations that had been ignored. The manager tried to defend himself, throwing out excuses, but the corporate representative cut him off. We've been monitoring reports from this location for a while. This isn't the first complaint, she said firmly. The weight of her words hit him hard, and his confident facade crumbled completely. Then, just as it seemed the truth had fully surfaced, the inspector revealed her final card. By the way, she said, locking eyes with the manager, this inspection was scheduled because of an anonymous tip. She turned toward the young kitchen worker, who looked stunned. You made the call, didn't you? The room was silent as the worker hesitated, then nodded. The staff erupted in support, realizing his bravery had set everything in motion. The manager was escorted out for a formal review, and the inspector, now smiling warmly, assured the team that change was coming. But as she packed up to leave, the inspector glanced back at the corporate representative. You might want to check other locations too. This pattern isn't isolated. The revelation hung in the air, leaving everyone to wonder just how far the problem stretched. In the days that followed, the restaurant underwent significant changes. The manager was removed from his position, pending a thorough investigation, and a temporary leadership team was brought in to stabilize operations. The corporate office promised stricter oversight and scheduled follow-up visits to ensure compliance. The staff felt a mix of relief and cautious optimism. For many, it was the first time they felt heard. The young kitchen worker, who had quietly endured so much, became a symbol of courage for his colleagues. The inspector's kindness and professionalism left a lasting impression, reminding everyone that fairness and accountability matter. Before leaving, the inspector shared a final thought with the team. No workplace is perfect, but everyone deserves respect and safety. Don't ever forget that. Her words resonated deeply, leaving the staff inspired to speak up if needed. As the inspector walked out, the restaurant was already starting to feel like a different place, one with hope for a better future.